and I'm currently an instructor at Re-Level by an academy. In this video, we are going to discuss about a very interesting problem in arrays. So firstly, let me tell you what you can expect from this particular video. In this video, we are going to discuss about the problem statement. Then we will discuss how we can solve this particular problem, and later on we will work upon its implementation. So let's just go through the problem statement first. Here the problem statement says you are given n arrays as a1, a2, a3 till an. You have to tell if it is possible to find some integers like c1, c2 to cn such that, let's say, if b1 is an array formed by subtracting c1 from all the elements of a1, similarly b2 is the array formed after subtracting c2 from all the elements of a2, and similarly bn is the array that can be formed after subtracting cn from all the elements of an. Basically, bi is the array formed by subtracting some constant ci from all the elements of the original array ai. Okay, then the condition is b1 is equals to b2 is equals to b3 till bn. It should be true. If it is possible to find such positive integers such as c1, c2 till cn that satisfies the given condition, then we have to print yes. Otherwise, we need to print no. So here, one of the main thing to notice is that c1, c2 till cn should be the positive integers. Now the input format for this particular problem are that first line contains a single integer t denoting the number of test cases. First line of each test case should be a single integer n, and next line for every test case would be containing the n space separated integers, which would be denoting the elements of the arrays a1, a2, a3 till an. Now in output format, you need to print yes if it is possible to find such a positive integers like c1, c2 to cn that satisfies the given condition. Otherwise, you need to print no. Now the constraints are that value of t would be from 1 to 5. The number of arrays in a particular test case, that is n, can be up to 500, and the element of the arrays, that is ai, can be from 0 to 10 raised to the power 9. So here is a sample input and output given to you. Now let's discuss how we can solve this particular problem. Let's understand this particular problem statement with the help of an example. So here, let's take this particular example in which there can be three arrays. So n is equals to 3. Then we are having three arrays as this is your a1, in which we have the elements as 4, 3 and 5. Then you are having the next array as a2, in which the elements are 2, 1 and 3. After that, we are having the third array a3 with the elements 3, 2 and 4. Now, as the question statement says, you would be given n arrays a1, a2, a3 till an. We have all these n arrays. Now what you need to do is, if it is possible to find some integers as c1, c2, c3 to cn such that b1 would be the array formed after subtracting some constant c1 from the elements of a1, right? So it's just that from all the elements of a1, which are 4, 3 and 5, we need to subtract some constant c1. So 4 minus c1, 3 minus c1 and 5 minus c1. Then it would result into some array b1. Let's assume that the elements after subtracting some constant c1 would be, let's say, x1, x2 and x3, right? Next thing is b2 would be the array formed after subtracting some constant c2 from all the elements of a2. So if your a2 is something like this, as it is given, 2, 1 and 3, then you have to subtract some constant c2 from every element. So 2 minus c2, 1 minus c2 and 3 minus c2. Then your resulting array would be something like b2, in which you can have the elements as, let's say, y1, y2 and y3. And similarly for your array A3 also. So your array A3 is 3, 2 and 4. Now you need to subtract some constant C3. So 3 minus C3, 2 minus C3 and 4 minus C3. And your resultant should be something like your array B3, which would be, let's say Z1, 3 minus C3 is Z1, 2 minus C2 is, let's say, Z2, and 4 minus C3 is, let's say, Z3. Cool? So right now we don't know that what constant C1, C2 and C3 should be. So we have taken that there would be some constant as C1, C2 and C3 which we would be subtracting from the respective arrays, and your resultant would be like this: x1, x2, x3, y1, y2, y3 and z1, z2, z3, right? For every respective array. Now the next condition says that b1 should be equals to b2, that should be equals to b3 till bn. So what it is trying to say is the arrays, the resultant arrays that you have formed, for example this b2, y1, y2 and y3, this b1, x1, x2 and x3, and this b3 consisting of z1, z2 and z3, all these three arrays should be equal. That means x1, y1 and z1 should be equal, x2, y2, z2 should be equal, x3, y3 and z3 should be equal. So here, as we know, the condition says that your all the elements of every resultant array should be equal. So here we can say that instead of writing it as y1, y2 and y3, the element should be x1, x2 and x3 only. And same thing should be happen in the case of A3, that instead of elements as z1, z2 and z3, all the elements should be x1, x2 and x3 only, because as we know that all the resultant arrays b1, b2 till bn should be equal. So the resultant elements of the array should be equal, right? Now as we know that all the resultant arrays would be equal b1, b2 and b3. Now the main point is we need to find the constants c1, c2 and c3. Now let's look at the next condition. It says that you need to find the positive integers c1, c2 till cn. So your constants can't be negative, right? Now, as we know that ultimately we need to make the arrays which are equal to one another, right? So what we can do is, among these three arrays, A1, A2 and A3, we can choose one array and we can try to make other arrays equals to it, right? This can be one of the approaches. So let's see if we can do that. So in our case, let's choose the array A3. And what we're gonna do, we would try to make A1 and A2 equals to A3 just by subtracting some constants C1 and C2 from A1 and A2 respectively. So here your A1 is 4, 3 and 5. If we want to make it equals to A3, that would be a resultant array 3, 2 and 4. Then we need to subtract some constant C1 from A1 to make it equals to A3, right? So what would be that number, right? How we can check it? If we would subtract 3 from 4, we will get 1. If we will subtract 2 from 3, we will get 1. If we will subtract 4 from 5, we will get 1, right? So that means our constant C1 can be equals to 1. That means constant C1, just by subtracting all the elements of A3 from A1, right? So as now we have found C1, let's try to find C2 also. The elements of A2 are 2, 1 and 3, and elements of A3 are 3, 2 and 4. Now let's try to find a constant C2 which we will subtract from A2 to make the array equals to A3. So if we will subtract 3 from 2, it would give us -1. If we would subtract 2 from 1, it would again give us -1. If we would subtract 4 from 3, it would again give us -1. So that means our C2 here is equals to -1. If we will subtract -1 from all the elements of A2, then the resultant would be equals to A3, right? That can be done. But there is one issue. What's the issue? If you remember our second condition is that C1, C2 till Cn, all the integers should be positive. But here your C2 is negative, right? So basically, it is somehow possible to convert A2 to A3, but we don't want a negative constant. So it would be +1. If we will try to convert A3 to A2, right? In that case, C2 can be +1. So this means that we can't select our target array just randomly. We should think first how to choose our target array, right? Now, as we need to find all the constants positive, C1, C2 till Cn. So what we can do is, we can choose a target array which is having the minimal elements, right? So that your difference would always be positive. And how we can find that particular array with minimum elements? So let's just see. Here, we can compare the first elements of every array. So first element of A1 is 4, first element of A2 is 2, and first element of A3 is 3. What we can do is, we can compare all these 3 elements and find the minimum one, and whichever array is giving you the first element as minimum one, we can take that particular array as the array with the minimum elements, and we can see if we are able to convert all our arrays to that particular array. Because it is sure that particular array is having first element as minimum, so other elements can also be minimum, right? So now instead of A3, let's try to convert our A1 and A3 to A2. So here are elements for A1 was 4, 3, 5. We need to convert it to A2, that would be 2, 1 and 3. Similarly, we're gonna convert A3, that is your 3, 2 and 4, to your target array, that would be A2, that is 2, 1 and 3. Now let's try to find C1, which is the constant that you would subtract from A1 to get the array A2. How we can find C1? So again, let's try to subtract the elements of A2 from the elements of A1. So 4 minus 2 would give you 2. Then 3 minus 1 would give you 2. And 5 minus 3 would again give you 2. That means value of our C1 would be equals to 2, right? If we will subtract 2 from all the elements of A1, the resultant would be the array A2. Now let's do the same thing for A3 also. Let's try to find C2, the constant which we would be subtracting from all the elements of A3 to get all the elements of A2. So let's subtract 2 from 3, it would give you 1. Subtract 1 from 2, it would again give you 1. Subtract 3 from 4, it is again giving you 1. So that means now your C2 is equals to 1. If you will subtract 1 from all the elements of A3, you will get the resultant array as A2. Fine. And as we know now, our C1 is 2, C2 is 1. Both are positive, right? But now the thing is that from every array you need to subtract something, some constant, to make it as equals to your array B, right? So now what we should subtract from A2? We have made your A1 as equals to A2 by subtracting C1. We have made our A3 equals to A2 by subtracting C2. Now how we can make A2 equals to A2? So that's simple. If we will subtract 0 from all the constants, from all the elements of A2, then we can make the array equals to A2, right? So, so that's simple, right? This is how we are able to convert all our arrays to some resultant array, and we are able to find the constant as C1, C2, C3, right? So now you can see our answer is yes, as it is given for your first test case, right? Now let's just list down our steps quickly, which we have done in this discussion. So our first step is gonna be to find the array with the minimum first element so that we can choose it as the target array, right? So first step would be find the target array. And which are sub steps for finding the target array? So first step would be to get first elements of all the arrays, right? And second step would be to find minimum element among all the first elements, right? And C is array with that minimum element would be a target array, right? So this was our first step, that was finding the target array, and we have all these sub steps. Firstly, to find for all first elements, then to find the minimum among them, and then we have to see which particular array is having that minimum element. Simple. So here in our case, it was array 2 with the element 2. Now, after finding our target array, our next point was that if we can convert every array to our target array, right? And we need to find the constant C1, C2, C3 till Cn. So we can write our second step. Try to convert all other arrays to target array. If you are able to convert all the other arrays to target array, and the difference, that is your constant, between your array and the target array is positive for all the arrays, then it is possible, then our answer should be yes, that it is possible to convert all the arrays to a target array. Otherwise, if you are unable to convert all the arrays to the target array, right? If this is not possible, or your difference is negative, in that particular case, we can say that to convert your arrays to the target array. Now here, how would you try to convert all the arrays to your target array? So basically, you would be subtracting your target array. So let's say that is your AT from every array AI. Okay. And you will be trying to find some constant C. So every element of your array AI minus every element of your target array AT should be equals to C. Then you are able to convert your current array to the target array, otherwise not, right? So let's just try to apply these steps on your second sample case too, for which the answer is no, right? So here your three arrays are given. So your n is equals to 3, in which we are having three arrays A1, A2, and A3. Let's just write all these three arrays. Elements are 4, 3, 5, 2, 2, 3, 3 to 4. 4, 3, 5, 2, 2, 3, and 3 to 4. Now let's check out our first step. That is to find the target array. For finding the target array, get the first element of all the arrays. So to get all the elements of the first arrays, these are your first elements 4, 2, and 3. These are the first elements. Next step is to find the minimum element among all the first elements. So here 4, 2, and 3. Among these three elements, 2 is the minimum one, your minimum element. Next step is that you need to find from which array this minimum element belongs to. That would be our target array. So here you can see this particular minimum element belongs to A2. So our A2 would be a target array. Now we would try to make A1 and A3 equals to A2 in this particular case. Now the next step is we would try to convert all our other arrays to the target array by subtracting all the elements of target array from the current array to get some constant C. So firstly, let's try to convert A1 to A2. So your A1 is 4, 3, and 5. Your A2 is 2, 2, and 3. Now let's see if we can convert A1 to A2. So your constant would be C1. And here 4 minus 2 would be 2. 3 minus 2 would be 1. And 5 minus 3 is 2. So here you can see the value of constant is different for every element, right? That means we are unable to convert array A1 to A2, right? So it's not possible to convert all the arrays equals to some resultant array because the difference between all the elements is not equal. So that's why in this particular case, for this question, we can say our answer is no. As we have stated this in our second step also, that if we are unable to convert or our difference is negative, in both the cases, our answer would be no, right? So here, as the constant was not equal for all the elements, so our answer is no. Cool. Now let's just see how we can implement this particular approach. Now let's just see how we can code the approach that we have seen. Firstly, let's take a variable n, which would give you the number of arrays that we are going to have in this particular test case. Next thing is, let's take the array, which would be having n arrays in it. So first array, your second array, and then your third array. So here let's copy the element from your sample test case. So your first array would be 4, 3, 5. Second array would be 2, 1, 3. And your third array would be 3 to 4. Let's make all these values comma separated. Cool. Now let's create a function to which to which we would be passing our n and our array. And let's store our result in the variable result. And after that, let's print our result as console.log result. Right? Now let's just create this function n arrays. So let's say function n arrays, in which we are expecting two things. First is your variable n, and after that your array of consisting of n arrays inside it. And if you remember our steps, what was our first step? Our first step was to find the target array. So our first step would be find target array. Target array. So our first step would be find target array. So initially, let's say our target array is at index 0. We would need a minimum number also to compare between all the first elements of all the arrays, right? So let's say let minimum number initially it is equals to infinity, just because we need to find the minimum number, so we are comparing it with the biggest one, so that minimum one. Now let's create a loop. So let I is equals to 0 till I smaller than n and I plus plus. Here we would be traversing through all the n arrays, and we will try to find a target array. So here we will just compare if your ith arrays, that is our current arrays, 0th element is smaller than our minimum number till now, then what we can do? We can update our minimum number to our current minimum number. That would be current arrays 0th element. And after this, we need to update our target array. So ith array would be our target array, right? So from this particular loop, as we are updating our minimum number, as soon as we are finding a new minimum first element, and accordingly we are updating our target array to the current array. At the end of this particular loop, we would be able to find our target array, right? So our first step is done, that was for finding the target array. Now here comes our second step, that is try to convert every array to target array. Here, what we would be doing, firstly we would be traversing through all the arrays. So let I starting from 0, I till n, and I plus plus. Here, if your current index I is equals to your target array's index, right? Then we don't need to try to convert, because that is obviously convertible and the constant would be 0 if you would convert the target array to the target array, right? So we only need to convert those arrays which are not the target array, right? So here we can say that if your I is not equals to your target array, then only we will try to convert it to the target array, right? if your if your current array is not the target array, then only we will convert it to the target array, right? And how we are going to convert it? So basically we are just trying to subtract the arrays. And how we are going to subtract the arrays? We would be subtracting your target array from your current array. So array I, right? And if you are able to convert it, so let's say let result, if we would be able to convert, then result would be true, otherwise the result would be false. So if your result would be false, that at any point you are unable to convert your current array to the target array, then we can just say return false from here. right? That we can't convert all the arrays to the target array. But if till the end of the loop we don't find any case in which we were not able to convert the array to the target array, then at the end we can just return a true. Simple. Now here comes the next thing, that how we would be subtracting the arrays. So let's just implement this subtract arrays function. So here function subtract arrays, in which we would be having two arrays. One is your current array and second is your target array. Here how we are going to subtracting. So firstly let's see the difference between the zeroth element. So let your constant c, let's say c, is equals to the difference between your current array's zeroth element and your target array's zeroth element. So current array 0 element minus target array 0 element. Now firstly we need to check that if this difference is positive, because if you remember we never gonna take a negative difference constant, right? So in case if your difference is negative, if c is less than 0, then we can just return a false, that we can't convert the current array to target array because the difference of zeroth element is less than 0, which is negative. Otherwise if your difference is positive, so here difference was negative, but if your difference is positive, then what we are gonna do, we would be checking that your difference should remain constant throughout the array, right? So difference of all the elements should be equal. Here we will just create a loop. Let I starting from 0, I smaller than, let's say, your current array dot length, and I plus plus. Here we are gonna check if at any point of time your difference is different from C. So if current array ith element minus target array's ith element is giving the difference which is not equals to C, then that means we can't convert your current array to target array. In that case we can just return a false, right? So here for every element we are checking that difference should be constant among the whole array. If it is different at any point of time, then we are unable to convert it to the target array and you can return a false. Now if you don't return a false throughout all these cases, that difference is not negative, and at any point of time your difference is not equals to your C. So if all the conditions satisfy, then at the end you can just return a true, that we are able to convert your current array to the target array, right? So here if your result would be false, then we can return a false. Otherwise we would try to convert your next array in this loop, and we would keep doing this till the last array. If till the end none of the arrays would return false, then we can just return a true, that we are able to convert all the arrays to your target array. And at the end what we are doing, we are just printing the result. Here you can just do this also, that if this is returning a true, then your answer should be yes. Otherwise your answer should be a no. Okay, and accordingly we can print the result. Let's just try to run this particular code if it is working or not. So here you can see for our current case the answer is yes, as we have taken it from the sample test case only. Let's try to change the value of an element in this test case. So let's say if we are making 5 to 4, then the answer should be false because the difference won't remain constant, as 4 minus 2 would be 2, 3 minus 1 would be 2, but 4 minus 3 would be 1. So the difference between these two arrays won't be constant. Answer should be false. Let's just try to run it. And here you can see for this particular case we are getting the answer no. Now let's talk about the time and space complexity also for this particular problem. So firstly, here we are finding the minimum, right? Uh, Among your n arrays. So this is a loop till O of n. So finding the target array is taking time big O of n. Now this is the loop in which we are traversing over all the arrays, and here we are calling this function subtract arrays. So how much time this subtract array is taking? You can see inside subtract arrays we are having a loop which is running till current array dot length. So let's say if the length of current array, or you can say the length of every array, is, let's say, m, then the time complexity of this particular function would be of m, right? So subtract array is giving you the time complexity of big O of m, which is the length of any of the array, right? Now, if we would talk about this particular for loop, so it is taking n time to traverse through all the arrays, then every array is taking m time to traverse through that particular array, right? So the total time complexity would be big O of n into m, right? Where n is number of arrays and m is the maximum length possible of a particular array, right? So the total time complexity would be big O of n plus big O of n into m, and we can ignore here big O of n as it would be a smaller value in comparison to n into m. That's why here the time complexity of this whole function would be big O of n into m, right? So I hope this approach and solution is clear to you, and you are able to get that how we can solve similar problems like this. So thank you. Take care.
हम्म and array. किसका